All right, welcome back to the Wealthy Women Daily Show. I'm so excited about today's guest. When you are on a wealth building journey, you want to have the right people in your corner to protect your wealth. Well, Timlin Bowens EA, America's favorite EA, is one of those people you want on your team. Timlin, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
We are glad to have you here because taxes can destroy your net worth. But before we dive into that, can you tell us what you do and how you became an EA?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give a little bit of a backdrop just in case people don't know what an EA is. So an enrolled agent is somebody that has been licensed through the Internal Revenue Service. So the EA license is actually the highest credential that the IRS awards any tax professional. So with that license, I have authorization to do tax preparation, which a lot of people are familiar with. I can also do tax planning, which I like to call preventative care. And then the part that sets us apart from other tax professionals is that we can do tax representation. Now, only enrolled agents such as myself, certified public accountants, CPAs, or tax attorneys can do representation. So, the way I like to put it in layman's words, because I'll say I do tax representation, and people are like, well, what does that mean? I actually step into a taxpayer's shoes to handle an IRS situation for them. So, for example, within my firm, Bowen's Tax Solutions, I work with individuals that owe the IRS $100,000 or more, or they are in an active audit. So the IRS is requesting more information to substantiate something. Um, and usually it will result in a higher tax bill, or they're actively being levied. So that means the IRS is all up in their bank account or paycheck right now.
That is very interesting. So you work with people who owe the high IRS $100,000 or more, six figures of tax debt. Ouch! That sounds painful, Timlin, but I know this situation is not uncommon, especially when you think about the number of self employed individuals who may not be paying taxes during the year. And if you're on this wealth building journey and you reach your seven or eight figures, you could easily owe the IRS six figures. Have you seen that situation? What happens when people are on their wealth journey? They're an independent contractor or a solopreneur and they come upon all of this wealth or income. Do they think about paying taxes?
It's the last thing they think about. And over 90% of my clients that owe that amount, they are entrepreneurs, self-employed. And what I like to point out to them is you know how to make the money. You're phenomenal at what you do. Being a tax expert is not a hat that you have to wear. That's definitely somebody you should have on your team, because something that entrepreneurs don't think about, if they are used to having a W 2 job, like, yes, when you get that first paycheck, you notice some money is missing, right? It's like, oh my goodness, I'm paying that much in taxes. But your employer is actually withholding taxes from your paycheck for you, right? And they're actually making sure those payments get put in. So within the United States, we are a pay as you go tax system. So if you're an employee, the employer takes care of that for you. They take care of withholding Social Security, Medicare. And what a lot of people don't know, that employers actually contributing to those funds for you on your behalf from your paycheck, but also they put in a portion. Well, when you are self employed, up to a certain amount of your income, the IRS says, congratulations, now you have the privilege of paying the whole lump sum of Social Security and Medicare. And that rate alone is 15.3% of whatever the business earner is netting. So their money after all expenses, 15.3% is going just to Social Security and Medicare. And then let's say, because they're not used to making this much money, they also are getting a punch in the gut because maybe now they went from the 12% tax bracket to the 24% tax bracket. So I was talking to a client this week actually, because they were like, okay, we see on paper we're making all this money, but like, where is it? We're not actually seeing it. In addition to not thinking about paying taxes, a lot of people, when they get an influx of money, everybody kind of falls into this lifestyle creep. So, yes, sometimes they're buying things so they can work more efficiently in their business, but that's money that they're not keeping track of. So, as soon as it's coming in, it's going out, and we're not preparing for taxes by making payments throughout the year, and we're not keeping up with income and expenses throughout the year. So what happens, it's tax time and the business owner is like, "Whoa, I know I made a lot of money, but I didn't make that much money, did I?" So, yeah, I tell people back taxes shouldn't ruin your life, but there's definitely some precautions that we should take to make sure that doesn't happen. Self-employed people just happen to be the, if you will, victim of it a lot of the time.
Timbaland, it looks so glamorous on social media, right? You see people who nail their profession. They're the experts. They're selling courses. They're speaking. They're doing this and that, making so much money, but nobody talks about the other side. So I'm glad you're here to really help us map out a game plan, right? The
Mhm.
income is so phenomenal, but there's another side of the equation that we need to calculate if we think about becoming an entrepreneur. And you mentioned making tax payments during the year. So you can make estimated tax payments during the year. There's a deadline for each period, but it's so important to pay at least 90% of your taxes by the end of the year, or you could be penalized. I think that's another piece of the pie that people don't know about. You do
Yeah,
this until
absolutely.
April 15th.
Absolutely. So some people will say, well, I'll just pay it all at the end of the year. Well, because we are a pay as you go system, like you mentioned, you have to have either 90% of your tax bill paid by the time that you file, or 100% of the tax you owed in the previous year. If not, not only do you have a tax bill, you're also going to get hit with an underpayment penalty. So you didn't withhold or make enough payments throughout the year. So to add salt to the wound, we're going to hit you with this penalty. Then we're looking at failure to file, and it just all accumulates so fast. And unfortunately, not preparing for taxes does cause a lot of business owners to quit their business because it's just too stressful for them. But again, when you're phenomenal at what you do, being a tax expert is not a hat that you have to wear.
Let's talk about that, Timlin, because, like you said, you're phenomenal at what you do. You're growing this business, right? People are growing their business and they are not in business to learn how to do the taxes. Leave that to the tax experts like Timlin. So, Timlin, who should people consult when they get into business and start making money? You talk about tax planners and EAs, CPAs. When do you consult each one? What's the timeline?
Honestly, people say, well, I can't afford to work with an accountant. You really can't afford not to, because if we look at how much it costs to get out of trouble, it's way more to work with me to get you out of trouble than it is to get tax planning in advance. So, to what you just mentioned with an enrolled agent and a CPA, it really depends on the needs of your business and specialization. So, in the beginning, I said, CPAs, they can represent taxpayers before the IRS, and so can enrolled agents. Even though they can, doesn't mean that they want to. So, I actually get a lot of referrals from CPAs and even EAs as well, because just because they can do something doesn't mean that they want to or they actually specialize in it. So when people are asking me like who to work with, you want to make sure you do your research to find out what areas that CPA or EA specialize in. If you are looking for more traditional accounting work, so people think of bookkeeping, fractional CFO, somebody to help you with projections. An enrolled agent could do it. So I graduated with an accounting degree. I know how to do that work, but that's not what I actually specialize in. For something like that, you can find an EA that does specialize in it, but that's, I would say, 9 times out of 10, what you're going to go hire a CPA to do. With an enrolled agent, because we have taken this three-part test administered through the IRS, we are going to be somebody that specializes in taxes. Now, we do have people that specialize in tax planning and then people that specialize in representation work. So, to make sure you never get to me to need tax representation, you would need a CPA on your team because you want to make sure that you are keeping track of income and expenses so you know what type of estimated tax payments to make, right? And they also, because CPAs are licensed through the state, they're going to have a better understanding of what's required of you to stay in compliance with your state and your local Department of Revenue if that's applicable for you. From there, not all CPAs do taxes. You may need to hire an enrolled agent to keep you in tax compliance and to do that preventative care to make sure that you're making the right estimated tax payments, to make sure that you have a tax plan that is going to be customized to you, your lifestyle, and goals. So it really is a team effort. I wouldn't put one above the other. It just depends on what area they specialize in.
Got it. So it sounds like people only come to you when they're in trouble. Is that true?
So yes and no. So as far as working one-on-one with the taxpayer, I did choose to specialize and do representation, and now I do have a bigger threshold because not everybody's going to owe $100,000. Thank goodness for taxpayers, right? But I have built another platform with America's Favorite EA to actually educate people to make sure that, and it seems like counterintuitive, but so they don't become my client because there are a lot of people, and again, I keep saying they're phenomenal at what they do, but maybe, especially coming out of the pandemic, they're a first generation business owner. So they don't understand how estimated tax payments work. They don't understand when they would need a CPA or an EA, um, how to go online and make a tax payment. So I enjoy the teaching part of it. So I do have that platform. So sometimes people come to me to get the preventative care um, resources, and then usually they're appreciative of that. So if they know a friend, know a family member that is in tax trouble, they will refer them to me. But I help people stay out of trouble too.
I love that. I know we have some people here who are probably not in trouble, but they are interested in building wealth by entering into a certain profession, right? And I'm sure becoming an EA is one of those ways in which you can increase your income, start a business, start building wealth. So, what is it like behind the scenes of an EA? What do you do from day to day?
It changes from day to day because I may think that my calendar is clear for 2 weeks, but when somebody actually decides to take care of their IRS problem, it is going to be urgent. So, for example, there is somebody who had reached out to me on social media. They knew they had a back tax issue that they kind of had just put on a shelf for 2 years. Well, we set up a consultation. Before we even had the opportunity to get on the phone, they sent me a letter, and the IRS had sent a letter to their employer letting them know that they were going to start garnishing this person's paycheck. This person was getting roughly $2,500 taken from their paycheck, each paycheck. So the IRS was able to hit them twice before I was able to get in contact with them. But here I am thinking I have this clear schedule. Well, if somebody's bleeding out like that, $2,500 a paycheck, that's something urgent where I need to get on the phone and get in touch with whoever has that account so I can get that levy removed. But for the most part, if you are a tax professional accountant listening to this, it's going to vary from day to day. It is still a management of cash flow. It is still preparation of a tax form because I have to be able to relay a person's financial information to the IRS to show why they can't pay in full when the IRS wants their payment. Um, but I get to do a lot of written correspondence For lien removal, I get to prepare appeals when we don't agree with the IRS decision on something and penalty abatement. But the typical day, I would say I have it spaced out. So I have maybe 1 to 2 consultations. So I'm getting an idea of what's going on with the taxpayer. My initial consultations are now paid. So when they get off the phone with me, they do have an actual roadmap. So they know exactly what needs to be done to take care of the problem. In our DIY society, that's something that I think is beneficial. But a lot of times, I'm working with a successful business owner and they don't have time to actually handle it. So if they retain me to take care of the situation, I make sure that I have a tax power of attorney and I go ahead and call the IRS that day. So again, I have to keep my schedule a little bit flexible because maybe I only have 1 consultation today, but if anybody's called the IRS before, they know I might be on hold longer than I'm actually talking to somebody. So I have to leave some flexibility and space there because you never know what adventure you might run into. 'Cause the IRS will tell me that the situation is completely different than what the taxpayer told me.
That's another reason to hire an EA because you can be on the phone for hours. You have no idea how long you can be on the phone. So, hiring somebody else to manage that process saves you so much time so that you can do what makes you money. You want to stay committed to those revenue generating tasks and have other
Yes.
people on your team who can do everything else. That's how you build wealth, right? So, Timbaland, I was not introduced to the EA exam or what an EA was when I was in college. It took me some years of being in the industry to find out, oh, an enrolled agent is an opportunity for people to represent taxpayers and dive deeper into the tax code. If somebody is listening and they want to take those steps to become an EA, where do they start?
Yeah, I was the same way as you. I fell in love with tax law and I intentionally was looking for something like that type of certification. So if somebody else is interested, um, now the IRS, the website's more user friendly, um, air quotes. But if you go to irs.gov, there is a whole section on under tax professionals for enrolled agents, and it tells you about the authority that an enrolled agent is going to have before the IRS, and it also breaks down the steps to become an enrolled agent. So as I mentioned earlier, there is an exam. It's 3 parts. And again, it just made more sense for me at the time to become an enrolled agent because I love tax law. So the first part is going to cover individual taxes. That includes things like trust and estates. The second part is going to be businesses. So your S corporations, LLCs, partnerships. And then the third part actually covers representation and ethics.
Got it. Got it. So before we wrap up, there are some people who may be in tax trouble or people who want to stay away from tax trouble. They want to be on good terms with the IRS. So, can you leave us with some tips for that new entrepreneur, somebody who's just fresh in, maybe 3 years in? They want to make sure they're doing everything they can to manage their tax responsibilities. What does that look like? What should they do before this year ends?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first thing that I recommend somebody, if they've made it to 3 years, first, congratulations, because a lot of businesses don't make it that far. But I want their business is their baby. So, want you to think about the best investments that you've made. You receive the best return on investment when you invest in yourself. Same thing with your business. And this is not even a pitch for me because I don't do compliance work anymore. But you need to find a tax professional accountant that specializes in your industry that is going to help you with preventative care. Because just doing your taxes, that's after the fact, and they can't really help you with any tax reduction strategies or anything for 2023. Now, there are some things that can happen within the next, 58 days, but not a lot. You want to make sure that you're taking a proactive approach to this because you don't want to be calling me later. And while you're searching for that person that's a good fit for you want to make sure that you do your research to understand what your obligations are. So you may not have known you're supposed to be making quarterly estimated tax payments, right? So that's something where don't let it be the start of your research, not all of it, but you can go to Google or YouTube and look up estimated tax payments, what those are, how you make them. The next investment that I would say is please, please, please. I start with a tax professional, but you need a bookkeeper. You need to know your numbers throughout the year just so you can prepare for a tax bill. Because I think that's the big kicker for a lot of people is they honestly have no idea how much money they've actually made and kept until it's tax time. And by then it is way too late to do anything to change that bill.
Great tips. Thank you so much, Timlin. Where can people find you?
Well, they can find me here on YouTube, America's Fave EA. So I put out content each week. Some of it is preventative care, and then some of it is actually helping other tax professionals that want to become an enrolled agent like me. But then I do also have a podcast, which is Tax Relief with Timlin Bowens. You can find it anywhere podcasts are streaming, and on there, or yes, on there I do cover issues for people that owe the IRS, but I also cover issues for preventative care. So if you're a new entrepreneur, you have no idea what estimated tax payments are, I have an episode that covers that. I mentioned self-employment tax, I have an episode that covers that. Because one of my personal missions is just to make sure that taxpayers understand how taxes work and how it is going to affect their lives.
All right, make sure you follow Timlin so that you can stay out of trouble with the IRS. And on the Wealthy Women Daily Show, we always talk about building your wealthy life, right? Your net worth is the sum of all the decisions that you make. And you want to be able to make wealthy decisions so that you can go towards that wealthy life you've created. And so I hope this information helps you get to the next step on your journey. Reach out to Timlin, America's favorite EA, if you have any questions, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel at Wealthy Women Daily. All right, talk to you later. Thanks, Timlin.
You're welcome.